All right, folks, we're back, and I apologize. We had a technical difficulty right about when we're going to start talking about some of the preventative solutions and/or solutions that we may have for our community. And I think, Chief, you were talking about, we obviously we know some of the ramifications. We talked about, this event that we try to do, but what are other solutions that you think can certainly help in bringing down that the chaos that leads up to the 4th of July and after the 4th of July? What are some of the things that we should be trying to implement? And I'll be more specific. What are other cities doing to try to prevent or identify some of those bad players in the community?
Yeah, one of the ways that many communities have gone to is going away from the criminal side of fireworks and doing it more towards a municipal code issue. Because on the criminal side of it, it's very difficult for officers because you have to identify who lit it off and actually see it being lit. That's what's needed for being able to prove that crime. Whereas if we make a municipal code, and most of them are calling them social host municipal codes, and the social host is if anybody on your property and lights it off in the street but is connected to your property or residence, then you receive the citation because you're allowing it in your property. And so that's a new different way. It's been going on for a couple of years, don't get me wrong. It's not brand new, but it's something that we're looking into right now currently of changing our ordinance to have more of a social host ordinance. That way we don't have to spend so much time trying to do undercover work, hiding, trying to identify, and then if that person sees law enforcement coming, sprints into a large crowd, and you're like, I can't pick him out now, it's dark. Well, in the future, if I see him walk out in the street, light it, and walk back, I just drive right up, say, where's all your stuff? I need to seize it, and I'm issuing you as homeowner or person who's in charge of the residence a citation for allowing it. And so doing more fines and trying to put that on the host rather than the individuals and trying to identify them. It won't completely solve it, but it will continue to go towards trying to reduce.
What about labeling as a national emergency and letting C-130s and paratroopers jump out when they see fireworks and just...
I was hearing that possibly next year the National Guard was going to be deployed throughout the state of California. No, bad time.
So with all this digital technology, and this is what people are always telling me, why don't you use this? Why don't you use that? And I'll be specific on what they're trying to get at. But we look at our digital technology, the advancement of that, facial recognition.
Can't use.
Okay, great. It's good.
We would love to use, but California tries to ban that.
Okay, so it's good to know all these things because it's important that people know what you can and can't do. What about drones? Drones being one of the bigger questions. Why are we not using drones? Especially someone that flies up there and can give us the aerial view of who exactly and pinpoint who exactly is letting that go. Is that something that's possible in the future? And does that technology exist now where we may be able to utilize that in the future?
Yes. And we just have to understand that the city of Madera doesn't have the funding currently to be able to put together what most cities are now moving to. It started in Chula Vista. Clovis PD did it as drones as a first responder. These are unmanned drones that are taking off from typically your police station and are able to be manned by themselves. They actually return and recharge themselves and then go back out. Currently, all of ours have to be manned by a person. And so it takes a body off the street, a body out of a vehicle, a body out of a neighborhood. Now, is there advantages to it? Yes. There will be more advantages once an ordinance is changed if approved by council. So a social host ordinance will make it much easier because you could fly the drone, you could identify, you can take that video and fly in, get a picture of the address, and then you could even mail a citation out to the person. Now, the goal is to go remove any excess so it doesn't continue to go on. But at that point, it has identified the location. That's all you need. As of right now, we got to identify the person. And sometimes at that height Can they see a true identity and see where he goes? It's difficult. And if you only have one drone up, it isn't going to make a difference. You need multiple throughout the city. So yeah, we did have one or two up this year at certain times, but then once that train crash hit, it really reduced our resources. So between everywhere else that was going on in normal calls for service, we didn't have the ability to just throw a drone up. We didn't have enough resources.
But I appreciate that, because at least it tells not only me, but also our residents of what efforts are being undertaken. And not only that, I mean, I think you still have to go through certain ordinances and what have you. I know these other cities are doing it. You mentioned Chula Vista, Fresno, Clovis. They may have the funds, or they may have these policies in place already to launch these types of services that can help. But the question that I pose is, what about, I mean, it's almost like a catch-22. Yes, we want to have more enforcement. Yes, we want to have more surveillance. But then again, I don't want surveillance.
Correct.
Right? So which one is it, right? And I think that's the hardest thing, is that certain crises present solutions, but at the same time, they could be solutions for problems down the road. And people don't think about that at the moment. They just want something to fix the issue that we currently have, and not thinking of what could happen in the future. So your thoughts on that?
You bring up a great point, because just this weekend I had questions as to why is a helicopter flying overhead? Can you imagine if I have 6 unmanned drones that are just flying throughout the city consistently and then returning back to home base, which is on top of the PD, and then flying back out once they get a recharge? Is that a government drone? Is that a personal drone? Why are drones always over my house? You're right. People don't want it. That's the piece of facial recognition. People don't want it. They feel it could be used in such a bad way. They also feel like drones could be used in a bad way. So they want to be able to have access to see where that drone went and why. Well, we can't always say why, and it's not used for nefarious purposes typically by government. Can there be? There's always a bad apple. So don't ever want to use the word never. Obviously, we've had officers arrested for specific crimes throughout the state and country. So it could be bad apples, but for the most part, it isn't used for nefarious purposes. So you bring up a great point, though. If we start flying drones consistently over places, there will be questions that you can't answer every single person's question. Like, what was that one up there? Was that government? I don't know that exact flight pattern it was on. I could go back and look.
But what I fear is, and you start getting into the Public Records Act, where because it's a public entity surveilling over certain things, there may be a request for video footage to see. I don't know if it happens now with cams that you guys have, but I'm assuming that, you may have folks that are very to the T when it comes to public law in California, constitutionalists and what have you, that may want to access, and before you know it, there may be a big request. I understand, like I said, it's a catch-22, because one, you want to limit or decrease the amount of, one could say criminal activity or misdemeanor activity, but at the same time, you don't want the ramifications of it that it can pose if you start getting to the surveillance piece of it. So
you must have done your research on this, because that chief in Chula Vista, Roxana Kennedy, she talks about this a lot. She's on the Cal Chiefs board with me, and she's currently still fighting all the way up to the Supreme Court. There's PRA requests regarding all her footage. She can't do it, because that means you have to have a person review it all and then be able to black out issues that cannot be released as a result of Public Records Act. So people's faces that are victims or any specific things. You can't do that and have a program. So there has to be some give and take there. So you bring up some great points.
And that requires obviously a lot more resources to do that.
Resources,
it's not easy.
Staff time.
We've had public records requests, even through our cannabis stuff. And I think when people want to demand something, then there's someone within attorney services and or staff that has to make sure that what you're given does not encroach in somebody else's, right. Yeah. Litigation can go up the roof, but today we wanted to kind of bring in the 4th of July leading up to and after, and we did have that break in there, but we wanted to make sure that we provided at least some solution. Before we leave, I'm going to ask my colleague here, Rohi, anything else you'd like to add before we cut?
No, I would just say in closing, I think, if the end goal is to completely eradicate fireworks, that's got to be the direction. If that's not going to be the direction, if we're going to say at some point fireworks are just going to be a continuance, which it's a national tradition, then I think California has to be accepting of there's always going to be this boom and bang. How do we make it safer? How do we allow it to happen? Because the people want it. I mean, it's obviously going on. So that would be my thing. Because I agree with that. At some point, you can throw so much resources at it, but if it's just for eradication, and like you're saying, if they're not really running into 100 people died on the 4th of July as a result of illegal fireworks, or there's not like this really public safety asset to it, then I think we're approaching it the wrong way. So.
Well, again, this is a great opportunity for us to really connect with the public out there. Here we have, again, our esteemed Chief, Gino Chioromonte. Thank you again for making it out here. We learned a lot about you today that we wouldn't otherwise know, right? So we didn't know that you were a classic car guru and you really like to bring this out here. But the one thing that we can bring back is maybe about that car show, that Main Street, or bringing bringing that type of style, Modesto style graffiti night type of showdown our downtown. That would be a great thing. But with that, we're now going to go ahead and say thank you for watching, and we look forward to seeing